On today's episode of Go Book Yourself, the podcast that helps you master writing, marketing, and publishing one bite at a time, I'm mixing it up a little bit in honor of today. Today heralds the arrival of a new phase of Go Book Yourself, having regular guests. Thus far, I have spewed out nearly everything I know about book writing. I've given you a solid platform to get to work and resources to refer back to later. So from here on out, enjoy a sprinkling of the most engaging minds I know, and we will get to our guest in just a minute. But first, I need to sing some praises. Yes. J Hill Creative, 1L J Hill Creative, loves Bookmark Publishing House. Oh, and vice versa. They are truly sitting in a tree, KISSING. So we want to say thanks a mil, J Hill, for allowing us to stay on the air and paying that production bill with glee. If you are ready to rock and roll your book, visit jhillcreative.com. That's jhill, 1L creative.com.
Tune in to Go Book Yourself, powered by Helix Interactive, with your book coach and publishing expert, Hilary Jastram.
My guest today is my dear, dear friend I often refer to as the accidental author, although there's no accident about how he has totally dominated his market. For the past 7 years, he has been consistently on the air on a podcast that he started called The Anxious Truth, a slightly unorthodox anxiety podcast that's been in full swing since 2014. I think you hit the mark and the record with over 1 million downloads and growing. Boy, I wish those were dollars per downloads. Wouldn't that be great? Ping, ping. The Anxious Truth has spawned a large, vibrant, and engaged social media community of amazing humans supporting, inspiring, encouraging, and empowering each other to overcome anxiety and fear. After Drew Linsalata liberated himself from crippling anxiety, he now helps others manage their anxieties and panic disorders using pointers and proven techniques that helped him with his challenges. Now, I tell you what, that's my favorite kind of person right there, turning it right back around. And now he's a god of the airwave. As of the airing of this episode of Go Book Yourself, he is the author of 3 books. And today we are going to perform a lobotomy of sorts on him. We'll pop off the top of his head and get into the gray matter of what works in writing a book. What you need to do, what you don't need to do, and what Drew learned in writing Lucky Number 3, the soon-to-be released 7% Slower, which will join its bro and sis, The Anxious Truth, and An Anxiety Story, both long-standing Amazon bestsellers from the man who cracked the code. Please welcome the man who loves pizza and swearing, Drew Linsalata.
Why do I feel like this is professional wrestling suddenly?
Because it is.
That was the greatest intro. I'm never going to get a better introduction than that ever. Never. I think so.
It's so true. You earned every word of it. So I'm just so happy that you're here today and kicking this off. This is a brand new phase for us at Go Book Yourself. And if you guys don't know, this is my producer. Drew is my producer, and he's done an amazing job. Our friend Mia is the sultry, sumptuous, salty voice who does the introduction. So we're all a family here. We all love each other.
And conversely, you're my editor. So
I know it all just kind of like it's a big Alabama incest fest, if you will.
Wow. There was the Alabama demo.
There it is.
That's
there it goes.
There. Yeah.
That's fine. That's fine.
So thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm very excited about your next book, 7% Slower. I love the alliteration of it. Did that figure into your plan for this at all, or does it kind of like spring to your mind? Take us back in time when 7% Slower became a thing.
Sure, I could do that. Okay, so the 7% Slower is actually a thing that I came up with many, many, many years ago, like 2006, somewhere in that neighborhood. So when I was dealing with my own anxiety problems and I was working sort of like the whole anxiety sort of recovery thing, one of the things that I would have a habit of doing, which everybody does, which is in the book, is speeding up. Like when you get anxious, you start rushing around like a crazy person, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of universal. That's just part of the deal. And I knew that that wasn't helping me. Part of the deal was I had to learn to slow myself down instead of speeding up when I was afraid. And I would get frustrated, and I literally would be like, slow down, moron. Like I'm talking to myself. And one day it just seemed like, just go 7% slower. It literally popped into my head because it's such an absurd, ridiculous idea. Like go 7% slower than you're going now. And it just felt like something, well, that's easy to remember. Just 7% slower. That's all you need, 7% slower. And I would tell myself that again and again and again. And that's where it came from. So it wasn't meant to be an alliteration. It was just an absurd number, 7%. You can't measure it. So like, all right, I'll just come up with that.
Do you think part of that success is that you don't really know what 7% is? So
Right.
it's a little jarring, and it makes you think about it for a minute, which takes you off of
Yes.
your problems.
It was because I could say like, well, slow down, slow down. For me, the idea of going 7% slower was, you can't measure it. It's ridiculous, but it
Yeah.
made me think that, oh, no, I have to slow down. It was just a little mental trick to remember to slow myself down as part of the recovery process. And what I was going through at the time, I was doing a lot of exposure therapy work and things of that nature. And you need to slow down when you do those things. And so 7% slower was just a silly little mental trick to remind myself to just go slower. The
I
percentage doesn't matter.
I love it though. I
Yeah.
just love it. I think there's such a genius behind it. Also, people love the number 7. It's really positive. There's a lot of like, superstitious folks that are like 7. I like that number. I'll do that. It's not quite 10, which
Yeah.
might be a little intimidating. There's all the listicles out there when you write like a 5 ways to make sure your kitchen stays sparkling clean and, whatever,
Yeah.
right? People love 3, 5, 7, 9, 11.
I
They
think
love
for me,
those.
it was like, it seemed, well, 5% slower, 10% slower, 25% slower. Those seem like standard numbers. This is
Yeah.
ridiculous conversation, but that literally was what was in my head. And I'm like, 7 seems weird.
I
Like no one
love
tries
it
to do
though.
7% of anything unless they're intentionally trying to do it.
Right.
So
Right.
that was kind of part of the deal. Like, yeah, 7% slower. And I would like whisper it to myself, like 7% slower. And I would,
Oh,
in my head,
so
just slow down, 7%, man, 7%. And
I love it. I love it. These are the things that people don't know. They don't know what's in your head. That's why I'm talking about doing a lobotomy, because we want to get that information out there. And so that, you started this book a long time ago, but a lot of people might not know that. It was when you saw the success of some of these books, some of the books out there today. You and I have had this very honest conversation. Some of the books out there are pandering. Some of the books out there are fulfilling what can be perceived as a marketing niche, but maybe is not necessarily so much value to the readers. So I feel like you took that niche and you said, hey, I'm going to funnel a bunch of value into this. But we just didn't understand that this came from so long ago, which I think is also a study in for the how many coaching clients do I have? 1 million. Okay. For the viewers and the listeners out there, it's a study, and you might have an idea that comes up, but put it off to the side because maybe it's not ready. Yours wasn't ready for quite a long time. I mean, you never knew this would be what the end result would be.
honestly, I've forgotten all about it. I literally had forgotten. I mean, I got better. I didn't need to go 7% slower anymore. I still do, but I didn't really need it. And it's so funny because after writing The Anxious Truth and an anxiety story and the success of the podcast and the social media community around it,
Yeah.
when I started working with a few people one-on-one on their anxiety recovery, I had to teach them to slow down. And it was a year ago. And I remember telling somebody, you just got to slow down. And she was like, I know, I try. And I said, try going 7% slower. And it was still back there. Like it's with the I blow the cobwebs off and like, try going 7% slower. And like, it really worked well for the people that I shared it with over the last year.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, you know what? I should probably share this on social media. And I mentioned it a few times and I started talking about going 7% slower. And I cannot tell you how like every day I'm seeing like, hey, I did the 7% thing. It's really working. It's really helping me. Like, that's when I called you that Saturday night. I'm like, I think there's a book here. I could be
Yeah.
wrong. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
No, that was crazy. And
yeah.
so your process, so this is what's interesting because you are the capitalizer of nuggets. They like these nuggets pop up and you go, some people get into this habit and they're like, oh, this came up, I'm just going to poo poo it. I can't do that. I don't know. That's silly. Whatever. Not you. You're like, this amazing thing came up. I'm going to capitalize. I'm going to do something with it. What is it like in your brain?
What's it like in my brain? That's a good question. What is it like in my brain? It's probably like it's a freeway. It's like the Autobahn, and but there's always a traffic jam, yet it's always going 152 miles an hour, I think. But it's okay because it's all controlled. I get it. And like I can get off an on ramp and I get off a ramp now and then rest when I need to. But I think that's what it's like. I don't know.
Interesting. You got some traffic circles in there.
There's traffic circles, roundabouts. There's all kinds of, there's detours, there's road work going on. There's always jackhammers. Like
there's always jackhammers. We're improving this area. Please don't pass this way, sir. There's a detour. Thank you.
Chaotic, but there's always a car fire somewhere. No, it's I don't know. I think about a lot of stuff.
Siren,
Right. In the distance, wailing. But that's what it is. And I think more than anything else, in this book, for instance, for sure, more so than the other two, which were organically grown. Like I didn't decide like, well, I'm going to write books now for some purpose. Like, this was information I was sharing sort of organically and for free just to help. And people still, please write this down. So I did. This one was the same thing. Like it wasn't like I need to find a thing to write a book about because I need a book that will sell, a zillion copies. It was like, oh no, people have told me this is useful, a large number of people, so therefore it should be a book.
Okay.
And that's the main thing for me. Like I don't get to say what's useful, my audience does, and then it becomes a book.
Okay, so that is a huge point, and it speaks to me of like testing your market a little bit. It's kind of wise to test your market, and we have the best market testing tool there is available. Facebook, Twitter, whatever the case is, right? That you can put that idea out there and see how people take it. And if, 6 people are like, yay, and there's like a lukewarm blue thumbs up, by the way, that offends everybody if you send a thumbs up now, because it means you don't love people. So stop doing it. Okay. Give people the love, just a little PSA from me to, the world.
It has to be the heart emoji or nothing. Is that it?
It does. Well, and the thumbs up does nothing from an algorithm. It just does nothing. It gives you like maybe just like a little blip, whereas it's the heart emoji. The last time I knew, the heart emoji and actually the anger one got the most. If that doesn't tell you about today's society.
Right, exactly. The anger emoji is most heavily weighted.
Yes. Either you're going to love it to death or you're going to hate it to death. There's no,
Don't be neutral here. Okay, I get it.
But pulling a lesson out, you can test your idea. So if you're thinking of writing a book and you've got, a decent network on Facebook, I guess you wouldn't even have to have a decent network. Maybe your grandma's in there, whatever. I love grandmas. So, but you can test it. That's the whole point. The process of what I think is interesting is that, so when you were struggling with anxiety,
right,
if an idea had come up to write a book, do you think that you would have just excused it completely?
I dismissed the idea of writing a book up until like literally 5 minutes before I started writing my first book. And that's truth. So while I was struggling with anxiety, I didn't even think that idea would have ever occurred to me. But had somebody said, you should write a book about what you're doing, I would have been like, yeah, right. I'll see you one day. Like, no, I would have never in a million years entertained the idea that I would write a book about that.
Was there something to do with self-esteem? Was it just the way you condition your brain? Was it just where you were in your life? Or why do you think you were responding that way?
These are really good questions. I don't know the answer to that. Like at any given time, it felt like, back in those days when I was struggling, anybody who's struggling with anxiety and trying to deal with an anxiety disorder would tell you, no, I'm not thinking about writing a book about this while I'm just trying to like not be terrified of my own heartbeat. Like I'm not really thinking about writing a book at that point. But afterwards, when I was kind of out of the woods and I started sharing my experience and helping people, almost immediately I had people say like, oh, you have a knack for explaining this. This is great. You should write a book one day. You should write a book one day. And I'm not kidding, Hill. It was probably, I don't know when I wrote The Anxious Truth, you edited that. So it was what, a year? It's out a year now. So I was writing a year and a half ago, 2 years
Year and a half, 2 years ago.
Yeah. So that was a good 8 years of podcasting and helping people online where people would say, yes, write a book, write a book, write a book. And it was like, I don't need to write a book. it felt, didn't feel right. It felt like, I'm just trying to help you get better. I don't want you to give me $20. Like, and that
Okay.
was the main thing. It felt very predatory to me writing in that
Yeah.
space. So it took a lot of people to convince me, like, no, 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 we want you to write a book. Please do this.
Yeah.
They
Well,
really, really, really worked hard to convince me to do it.
do you feel like you had to go through a necessary hell to get here and to be able to help people? If you hadn't gone through what you had gone through, do
Mm.
you think that you could speak with such authority on it?
No, definitely not.
Hmm.
There's no doubt about it. If I hadn't lived that experience, you and I wouldn't be talking about this right now. Like, I'd have no reason to write about it.
I
So,
know, and that's unacceptable to me. So thank you for going through the hell.
as crazy as it sounds, like, I can laugh about it now. It did suck for many, many years of my life, but like now, at least it doesn't feel like I did it for nothing. Like, it feels like it was for something now. So
It helps, doesn't it, to have even just like a shadow of a why, just
a
a
little bit,
little.
yeah, a little bit. Like, oh, okay, this is now I can deal with that now.
I
Yeah.
get it. I can see it. So when you decide I'm going to write this book,
Mhm.
what happens? There's like all the minions in your brain are like, this is not a drill. Go, go, go. Like, does everybody just like run? You've got a whole new process that you've got to embark. You flip the switch. What happens? There's a huge mindset shift that happens from I'm going to like, we're going to do it
Yeah.
before maybe I will.
Um. So, I mean, this being the third book, now I know how I write a book, right? So, because I wrote
Yes.
two already. So now I
Mhm.
know. So if I'm talking about this book, 7% Slower, it was, okay, let me think about this I'm not kidding. Like, there was a Saturday night that I reached out to you. And as always, I'm like, not now. Sure enough, 10 o'clock, I'm getting texts from you. Like, no, we'll talk about it now. So I would say it was literally sitting on my deck outside by myself. Hell of a Saturday night by myself in the dark. And,
Woo!
I can party. I'm not,
Rein it in, man.
so I literally sat and I was thinking about it. And you know why? Because I was doing some experimenting with like cutting the price of the Kindle edition for The Anxious Truth on Amazon, and just learning and seeing what happens. And I'm like, oh, great. I'm now number one in these three categories. And look at the books that I've jumped over. I'm like,
Mm,
these are these little like 15,000 word kind of mini ebooks that are all priced at this very low thing. And they're very, kind of not clickbaity, but they're very catchy in what they're talking about. Like, that's a whole cottage industry here, writing these little tiny quick hit
mhm,
books. And I'm like,
mhm.
I could write one of those, but what would I make it about? And then it was like, oh, I know what I would make it about. I got a book that I have to write right now. Um, so it was that. It was literally about an hour worth of a little bit of deliberation, hanging out, listening to music. And then when I called you and I'm like, what do you think? And you're like, yeah, I think you should totally do it. And then my decision-making process, yes, then it goes into gear. Like, it's like, okay, so now I will just every day for the next 2.5 or 3 weeks that it took me to write, I will sit for an hour at a minimum and I will write. And
How do you make yourself do that? So many people say, I'm going to do that. I'm going to check it off on the calendar. But that time comes up and they go, oh, you know what? I'm really out of potting soil. I better get that right now. I really need to regrout that shower. It's just driving me crazy for the past 10 years. Now is the time. How do you make yourself conform to what you tell yourself you're going to do?
um, I mean, discipline is a thing, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So there's the meeting of a challenge, which is always a motivator for me. I'm a
Okay.
weird dude that way. Like, I want to do hard things. I want to stretch myself. I want to challenge myself for no other reason than to do it, to know that I can.
Yeah.
So I think in this situation, the challenge, the motivator for me was like, okay, I've already written a giant, like 70,000 word book. And then I wrote the first book, which was smaller than that. So can I write one of these sort of quick hit books? I knew that I wanted to write something that was an easy read, friendly, like accessible, but useful at the same time. Doesn't take somebody 4 days to read this book. It's a couple hour read. And I'm like, okay, so I want to meet that challenge. I want to write that book now, that kind of book. And so for me, it's easy. Like, no, I told Hillary I was going to do it. And I told myself I'm going to do it. So you do it. I don't know. I have an answer to that. I just said I was going to do it. So I did it. Like,
Yeah.
then there are times in the writing process when I don't feel like doing it, but what am I going to do? Like, this is what I said I would do. So this is what we do. We'll sit for an hour and we'll write.
Do you ever, when you feel like that, do you ever step away and say, okay, you know what? I've procrastinated 15 minutes. I got to get to it. Or are you just that rigid? I said, no, I'm going to do it from 2 to 3. That's what I'm going to do. And there's no buts about it.
For me, the most productive time is I have to make sure that there's nothing else pressing, right? Because I'm also taking care of other stuff. I'm not a full time like this. I'm not Stephen King, right? So there are other things going on. So I always have to make sure that everything else is taken care of, which
Yeah.
means that I am best writing either at 5 a.m. or
Okay.
at like 10 p.m.
Okay. Great.
So it wasn't during the day at all. It was like, okay, I'm going to get up and I'm going to do my morning meditation and I'm going to work out for my half hour to an hour. And then I'm going to write for an hour. So I will finish all that before we ever get to the point where anybody in the world is looking for me. I have to answer phone calls, answer emails, anything like that, or at the end of the day. So there were days here and there in writing all 3 books when I had to juggle that a little bit and change it. But yeah, I was always open to flexibility. I'm not rigid in any way, but I just know what works for me. So I try to do that as best I can.
So it's interesting to me too, because you have a really well-known podcast, but you write old school, which I think is really interesting that you haven't.
I'm not sure what you even mean by that. This is interesting to me.
So you don't dictate it. You don't speak
I write.
it. You actually write it.
Yes.
Okay. So how long does it take you to write like a chapter?
Okay. So here's what I learned writing The Anxious Truth. Well, and writing those 2 first books were really, taught me how I write. I didn't know how. I've never written a book before, right? So
yeah,
what I learned is that in an hour, I know that I'm going to write 1,000 to 1,500 words. I just know that's kind of the minimum output.
yeah.
There are some hours when I will, maybe I shouldn't say this because I'm not gloating here, but there are some hours when I will literally write 3,000 words. And
Okay.
it's just effortless. It just happens. It depends on the chapter and what I know I have to write in that particular chapter. And so I don't know. It's like pounding on the keyboard is much faster than dictating it to me, because when I talk, we don't talk like we write. Although one of the greatest compliments that I'm most proud of is when people read what I write, they say, I feel like I'm listening to you.
Yeah.
I hear your words in my voice. So they think I
Yeah.
write like I speak, but if I'm speaking into the mic, it doesn't feel right.
Okay. So you're Samuel L. Jackson is what I'm hearing. That's what I'm hearing.
I guess I would take that. I don't know.
You know how they always there's that kids book that was like go the F to sleep, and then it's like yeah, and he narrates it or whatever. Yeah, for sure.
A little bit, because if you listen to my podcast, I mean, I don't know, people will say that when they read my books, they feel like it sounds like me, like you write just like you.
Yeah.
But yet I don't feel, I could not dictate the books. I couldn't do it. I have to write. Plus I'm fast. I type fast, and it's just, that's how it comes out. I don't know what to say.
You're Speedy Fingers McGee is what I've heard. That's the word going on around town. You have actually, well, the other word is that you have 11 fingers, that you just keep the one hidden all the time, but that's your secret weapon.
But I'm up against the deadline. Got to use that 11th finger. There's one too many dental x-rays, but it turned out for the best.
It did. It did. We're always looking for the upside, always for that silver lining. Absolutely. Is the 11th finger. So do you have any rituals when you write? Because I know you've got Kermit behind you. Do you need anything around you? Do you need your skull mug where you're pretending to drink the blood of enemies? Do you have those anchoring things that you do?
That's a good question. So I do have a little bit of a ritual. I don't have to be in any particular place. I don't need any particular thing around me. That's not necessarily important at all. I could pretty much write anywhere.
Yeah.
But what I learned in my first books was, as crazy as, the Audubon brain that I have.
Yeah.
That is a time when one of the skills I learned from part of 7% Slower was how to slow that down and focus that. And what I learned when I was writing my first book was, oh, no. I can't be multitasking Drew like I am most of the day. I can't write that way. Maybe some people can. Yeah. And I'm a multitasking mofo. Like I get a shit ton of stuff done because I'm able to move my focus very quickly between tasks. But if I'm going to sit for an hour and write, or I know today I'm going to write 3,000 or 4,000 words, my ritual is every app gets closed. So I write in a specific app called Ulysses. I just like it. There's no, I write in Ulysses for the Mac or iOS, so I can write on my iPad. This whole book I run on an iPad with a keyboard.
Okay. So talk to me about Ulysses, because I haven't actually heard of that.
Okay, Ulysses is like a Scrivener, or there's,
Mm,
there are software for authors. I just happened to stumble upon Ulysses 2 years ago, and I dig it. It's
that's awesome.
super clean interface. So my ritual is every app gets closed except for Ulysses on whatever device I'm on, which is either going to be my iPad or my MacBook. Um, I'm going to put headphones in,
Yep.
and I'm going to listen to music with no lyrics, movie soundtracks or classical music or jazz or something like that. No, it
Yes.
can't have lyrics. And the phone goes on airplane mode, like, so no phone calls, no text, no nothing. And I set a
Mhm.
timer and I go. And
That's
that's,
fantastic.
yeah, distraction free. I like Ulysses because it is a distraction free. There's no toolbar. I can go full screen on whatever device, and it's like I'm typing on a piece of paper.
Oh, that's fantastic. So you're kind of going old school electronica.
Yeah, it's certainly, it's electronic, and it's cool because it syncs between, if I'm writing on my iPad, then it shows up on my Mac 30 seconds later, which is great. But that is my ritual. Earphones on, music with no lyrics, set the timer for at least an hour, the entire world has to get tuned out. But I guess that's the strength for me for sure. Like, I've got that crazy Audubon chaotic brain, but I can lower the volume and get off the highway and just do what I need to do for an hour. No problem. But I had to learn. That's a life skill that took me years to learn.
Yeah, 100% no. And also the compartmentalization of
Yes.
saying,
Yeah.
I'm
Now
shutting this off.
yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's easier for us because we're older. So we can go back in time and be like, oh, it is like we're in first grade and the teacher is, telling you only do this one thing or only do that one thing.
Yeah.
Versus like my kids are like, I need to be on 12 different devices at the same time or I don't matter in this world. It's just a whole different, it's a whole different thing. I know this is a sad thing to say, but
No,
dude,
but it's true.
man, it's true. And it's not just my kids, it's me, it's my husband, it's everybody, it's you, it's everybody. Is we're being groomed in this society. So I'm not picking on my beautiful children, although they won't watch anyways. They're like, Mom has a podcast. She's a dork. Thank
They're
you.
gonna
Yes, I
hear it.
am.
Yeah. Coming up after the break, Hillary will tell you to get off her lawn. So
Right, exactly. Exactly. And watch me match my black socks with my Crocs. Okay.
I'm going to tell you, this is a good time to insert what I think your listeners will find an amusing story about writing. I wasn't actually working on 7% Slower. I was working on Lessons from the Panic Zone, which is the one we'll do next together, right? So I was working on that earlier in the summer, and that one's on the shelf for now, right? And I decided I'm going to go. It was a beautiful day, so I'm going to go to the beach, and I'm going to write on the beach. So, which is great. Like, you can do that now, right? So I'm sitting there, and it was beautiful, and I'm looking at the water, and I'm pounding away on my keyboard like I use. And so there's a woman maybe 20 feet away from me on the same beach. There's hardly anybody on the beach, right?
Yeah.
And she's on the phone, and I hear her talking, and she's writing a book. So the two of us are writing a book on this beach on the North Shore of Long Island, right here on the phone. And I'm pounding away on the keyboard, and she actually calls over to me and she's like, "What are you working on?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm actually writing a book," which, forgive me, but I could hear you through my headphones because she wasn't the softest talker. And I hear that she's writing a book, right? So she's like, "Oh my God, you're writing a book. Is this your first book?" I'm like, "No, I've written two before." So we talked for a couple of minutes. She was super friendly. Then I just went back to my stuff and she went back to hers, except I watched her take, if it wasn't 15 or 20 minutes, it wasn't a minute, to carefully pose pictures of her on the beach writing her book. So
Oh,
I wrote
yeah.
800 words in the time that it took her to pose for Instagram so that people would know she was on the beach writing a book. So they're talking about if you are going to write a book, you best just write the damn book. Like,
Yeah.
don't worry about the pictures of you writing the book. And I remember looking like, that's interesting.
That's
So
interesting.
that's a true story. Yeah.
That's crazy. No, it's crazy. And I read something similar to that today, which is about there's a time when you just have to get to work.
Yeah.
You have to stop talking about it. And the people
Yes.
that are producing are the ones that are saying, sure, I could be taking a picture right now. I could be doing a photo op. I could be doing some branding, whatever. Right. But if all you're doing is branding, then what do you have underneath it? It's just this house of cards. You have nothing of substance inside. So you actually have to take the time and sit down. And I think, and this as an author, you have to get uncomfortable. You have to sweat. You have to feel like, okay, it's coming out of me. And I'm going to be in this place of self-acceptance right now. Whatever comes out is whatever comes out because I'm here to create. I'm here to work. I'm not
Yeah.
here to judge myself.
Right.
you
Right.
know, but I think you do that on a daily basis. I think you wake up and I think you're like, Drew, good morning. It's going to be fabulous. Also, you're amazing. Let's get going. I know I do that. I'm like, let's wake up and kick some ass. Let's wake up because I feel so fortunate to do what I do. You feel so fortunate to do what you do. So it's huge when you wake up and you just want to like, just hug everybody, man. Like, aren't you happy, man? Did you have a great day?
Well, I think I'm panicky now. Pardon the pun, but
Yeah.
I think this guy's talking about not getting panicky. I think for me, it's like, I'll be honest with you. There's not a lot of, and I fully validate that. I know depending on what you're writing, you
Mhm.
will wind up in some uncomfortable places.
Yeah.
I never have found that writing put me in an uncomfortable spot, but I do have to remind myself that no, 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 the object of the game here is to just keep writing right now. So I
Right.
do get that. That is 100% true. There are times when I'll stop for a second and I'll look and I'm like, that isn't quite right. And then
Yeah.
there are literally times when I'll stop and I'll like, no, no, this actually belongs in this chapter. So before you even see it, I've already like, well,
Oh,
I
I
wrote
know.
the last 3 paragraphs, but this really belonged in chapter 6. So let me move it there now before I forget,
I'm
or I'll
fully
make
aware.
notes to myself. Right. I'm sure you could see it. Right.
I
Uh,
do. I see the mania right here.
it's weird. Right. And then in the end, but there's not a lot of discomfort, but there is I do have to remember like, oh no, that's what Hillary's there for. And like, this doesn't have to be perfect right now. And it just go.
And just
And
release it.
when I find that when I do that, instead of trying to make like final copy all the time, invariably I tend to wind up making what is mostly final copy. If I
Because you're
try to, it doesn't happen. I just, whatever, man, I'm going to just write whatever comes out, knowing what's in my head. It works out way better.
it's
Way,
that's a huge page in Natalie Goldberg's book, Writing Down the Bones, giving yourself the freedom to suck,
yeah.
because you will not. And you know what, though? It's interesting because that is a very similar process to what you teach. You give yourself the freedom to feel, you give yourself the freedom to panic, and then
Yeah.
you find out, oh, I'm not going to do that actually.
Yeah.
If I,
Or that wasn't
because
so
you're,
bad.
yeah, it's not so bad, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And what's the worst thing that's going to happen is that you find out you suck, you identify it, and you say, I'm going to fix it now.
Yeah. Like you could go back and, my process, I wrote the entire book and then I have to
Mhm.
go back and read the book, which I sort of hate
Yes,
that part.
I
But
hate
now,
that part too.
right now I'm going to read the book and then I'm going to go back and like, all right, what needs to change here? And there's stuff that needs to change always, like, that wasn't so good. That didn't turn out so great, but that's all right. It's like, in the end, like I know that's going to happen. And when I go back to do that first edit that I do on my own, it's never like, oh my God, that was so terrible. I'm the worst. It's just
Right.
like, oh, I can fix it. It's clearer now because I wrote so many other words.
Yes,
Sense like
yes.
the writing of the rest of the book informs the changes in the book. I
I
don't know
love
if
it.
that
And
meta,
I
but
feel like you just like hit on a mantra. I can fix this.
you fix
So
it later.
it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, keep that in your head. So it's not like, oh my God, I'm going to send this out into the world and I'm never going to be able to take it back. You have so many iterations of editing ahead
Yeah.
of you.
Yeah.
There's nothing about releasing this to another human being that seals your fate, that you're going straight to hell. You're not passing go. You're not collecting 200. There's
Yeah.
nothing. There's nothing about that, and I think you can create your own security in that way. So I was going to ask you now, when you write, do you write to somebody? Like Stephen King has constant reader. Do
Mhm.
you have like constant listener? Is that you?
Yes. I think
Really?
I think I do.
All
Yes.
right, everybody stay tuned because this is a little tidbit that has
Yes.
never before been spoken of.
No, I think I do. And one of the things that I do, and now I'm not even going to remember the woman's name, and she's huge internet marketer who I do not follow and I'm never going to follow. But what got me to the point where when people were asking me for years to write, and I'm like, and I would sit down and start writing, and I thought I had to write the whole book at one time. I was that
Yeah.
guy. Like
Yeah.
so much in my brain, like, no, I have to tell them how to solve this whole problem in the next hour of writing. Like,
Right, right, right.
no. So I listened to a podcast one day. I was out like walking or whatever, and like, oh no, this is how you make an internet course. Like, and first it was like, who is your audience? What is their problem? what is the promise that you are making them, and what will they be when they first start reading, and what will they be when they are at the end of the book, or for them at the end of the course, how will they change in this
How do
course?
they change? Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, that's how I'm going to write a book. So that's how I wrote, that's how I outlined the anxious truth. Like, and so same thing with 7% slower. Nobody ever sees that. You haven't seen it, but it's the first page in Ulysses is that title, problem, promise. Here's the person that I'm writing to, and here's what they should be at the end of this book.
That's
And so
fantastic.
that does inform me. I write it once. I don't go back and refer to it very much, but I know that's who I'm writing to.
Okay,
They're-
I love it. And that's exactly it, because you have to spend as, I don't want to say as much time on positioning, but you have to spend as much time on positioning as you have to spend to get super clear. And I love what you're talking about, the reader transformation. Who are they after? You've helped them solve the problem. Now they can be this person, even if it's only in their minds, just for the moment. Even if they can only just go there and say, what does Natalie look like without anxiety?
Right.
And just go
Well,
there for a minute.
here's one thing that's interesting. This is a good conversation, but I appreciate these questions because you're making me think about my own shit. Yeah. Ooh, was I allowed to say that?
It's all
So
good.
it's all good. I'll bleep it. I'm the producer. No problem. Um, I
Please
think
put a chicken squawk
a
in
chicken
there.
squawk in there, an old fashioned bike horn.
Yeah.
So what's interesting about me, and like I'm writing about anxiety recovery and anxiety disorders, and you would think that the goal that I'm writing for a person at the end, they've read the book and
Yeah.
they don't have anxiety and they're living their best life. No, like I am literally writing so that at the end of the book, you will know what direction to go into to get there.
Yes.
So it's
That's
really
amazing.
important because I think it made my writing so easy to apply for so many people. Because
Yeah.
there's no way I'm taking somebody who's had panic attacks for 10 years. And
Yeah.
I don't care how many pages, 400 pages, I'm not taking away the panic attacks. That would be ridiculous to promise them that.
Right.
They don't know how to do that. So the best I could do is to teach them. And now you go. So I'm going to take you and point you in this direction and give you a bunch of roadmaps. And now you go.
Yeah.
So that definitely informs every word that I put on the paper. I'm not trying to solve the problem. I'm trying to teach you how to solve the problem.
I love that. I love that. You're saying the promise is, I promise to teach you.
Yes, I promise to give you tools that you can now practically use.
Yes.
And maybe that sucks from my book marketing because I can't promise them that they're going to be living their best life after they read 7% slower. But I'm going to tell you that I can give you a tool that will help you toward that goal for sure.
I'm guessing nobody would say you suck. I'm guessing absolutely zero, because you have such a tremendous following. You have people that lavish all over you because you've helped them so much. And all of this has grown into professional coaching that you're helping people as well. So that the promise is that, and what I love about your group too, is that you don't allow the pandering. You don't allow like the pandering for emotional response that sometimes people do. And they'll say like, I want to talk about how bad it is right now and how I'm different because I want attention, because attention makes me feel good and special and loved. Okay. And that's great, but that
Sure.
doesn't help you. And you don't tolerate that. You say, no, that's not helpful. And we're not doing that right now. What we're going to do is focus on this is what you need to do. And this is how you need to use the tools.
Yeah, that's been from day one. And, I think when I needed a name, the podcast originally had a different name and then I had to change it.
Oh, what was it?
It was it's so interesting. 2014, I decided I should pay some of this stuff back. Like a lot of people help me. So I'm gonna start talking into a microphone, right?
Yeah.
I'm gonna do a podcast. I didn't know what I was doing. I had a $5 app on my phone, podcast app, whatever the hell it was. And like, all right, I'm start talking into a microphone. And I needed a name. I'm like, oh, I got to name it. Don't laugh. But I had the TV on in the living room. It was like 11:39 and by myself. There was a promo for, remember that 70 show? Remember that?
Yes. Yes.
By the way, I've never seen, but the promo was there and everybody knows the show. And I'm like, oh, that anxiety guy. So it used to be that anxiety guy, which I never really liked.
Yeah.
But there is another anxiety educator, or whatever you want to call that, calls himself the anxiety guy.
Yes.
And we wound up, it was just confusion. And so it was like, you know what? I don't really dig the name anyway. I kind of hate it. So let's change the name. And I asked my listeners, like, what should I name the podcast? And The Anxious Truth came out because that is my stock and trade. Like, I don't sound like everybody else in the space.
Right.
I feel like I'm deliver it with compassion. But I always see myself as like, I'm not like, I'm like the football coach that kicked your ass because you did it wrong. But then I'm going to put my arm around you after and tell you that I know you're working hard and I know you can do it right. So
I
that's why
know.
I do it. Yeah.
That's why
So,
everybody loves you though, because they're like, he will totally kick my ass and I can't wait for it. And then he's going to hug me and give me a big bear hug.
well, I'm always trying to encourage people, and I think what's important, to bring it back to books and writing is like that voice is always the same, whether I'm in a microphone or there's a camera on me or there is. So like that has been hugely beneficial to me. Like if somebody fires up a podcast episode or sees that I'm on a video with somebody or I wrote something, they know exactly. I'm like McDonald's. They know exactly what they're getting. A Big Mac is always the same. So they know exactly what to expect,
Love
and
it.
I think it makes a difference because there's consistency there. The voice is always the same. The delivery is always the same. That's helped. So I
Oh
do write,
yeah.
speak. Yeah.
It's the
And I
expectation.
leave you to mop it up. Like
And what
I want to capitalize 7% slower throughout this entire book because it's the title of the book. Should I? Should I not? I don't know. Hilary will figure that out. Well, off it goes. There was a bunch of that stuff using like the ellipsis and the dashes, like the mechanics of writing that book. There was a lot of stuff in there. Like I'm writing like I would be speaking. This is probably not correct, but thank God she's so smart.
You know what? It's interesting. I do continuing education all the time. I am
Yeah.
constantly looking and relooking up things, checking out different rules and things like that. And if I have a string of numbers, but one is over 100 and one's under 10, what are we doing? Like that's stuff for the author not to worry about. And I don't care who you are. If you're an author, you need an editor. I do not care who you
Yes.
are. You
Yeah.
just can't see.
Your own stuff.
No, and I tell you what, when we moved in this house in 2019, and I was like, I got a wild hair up my butt. I'm going to write a book. And I wrote it in 30 days. And I recently read it, and it is terrible. So
Oh, come on. Sure, it's not terrible. Did you have an editor for your book or no?
I don't have one yet. I will need one, but I don't have one yet. And but I mean, this is just
the book that you wrote in 30 days, you did not have an editor look at.
no. I had one person look at it, and she is not like an official editor.
Mhm.
She is a person who just was acting more like a reader, and she's good at punctuation, kind of a thing. But I did like there are moments of lucidity. And then there are moments of like just full on like riding the crazy train. Like just we're going to just follow this stream of consciousness wherever the hell it goes. Here it goes. And I'd have a bunch of asides in there. Like I would make comments about people at the gym and why can't you put your underwear on over there? Like it seems like when I go to the gym every time, I'm always like, it could be like nobody else in the locker room. And then there's a woman that has to put her underwear on like right next to me. And I'm literally like, there are 5 other benches here. Why are we together in this very uncomfortable fashion? So it's things like that I do in regular life that I just started like vomiting out in this book.
Into the book?
Yes. So an editor is going to be like, first of all, dude, you need to start up therapy again. Okay.
Second of all.
Yes. And
No,
second of all, like,
but that's true though, because there were quite a few times. And yes, if anybody's listening and you think that, Grammarly is great, but Grammarly ain't an editor, I'll tell you right now. So like there are plenty of things in this book and in my first 2 books too, that, the feedback that I got from you was invaluable. Like, dude, this just flat out doesn't make a lot of sense this way. Like, I see what you're getting at, but can you rewrite this? And like, she's dead on right. It seemed like such a good paragraph at the time. Like
it does though.
Gold. This was 400 words worth of pure gold when I wrote it. And I'm like, oh no, that sucked.
And here's why. Because it's been rolling around in your subconscious. You've had time to get used to the idea. Yeah. You understand. And so you need limited information to understand that idea versus somebody who's receiving it for the very first time. It's almost like stereo instructions. Yeah. Have you ever found yourself trying to train somebody on something and then you have to catch yourself and go, wait a minute, this person has never opened this application. I have to talk to them. If I'm in Audacity, for example, open one track, and if you screw up, you got to close this box and you have to go back and you're downloading it as I'm probably getting all the things wrong. Right. You're exporting it as an M4 or whatever. Well, what is an M4 and why do so you have to take all of those steps back and you just can't can't assume that the reader knows. And I don't say dumbing down because I'm not a fan of that phrase. I actually think it's really insulting. I will say simplify. We need to simplify. And the best authors, you're a testament to this, are the ones that you can just lope along in the book. And I talk about this. I edit for lopeability. Can we lope along? Is it just like this? Boom, boom. There's no snags. Here we go. The cadence is important. Also, if you don't read your book out loud, read your book out loud. Walk around your yard, read your book out loud. Look like the lunatic you are. Okay. Embrace it.
The lunacy.
Embrace the lunacy. It is lunacy. It's total lunacy. But yes, so that's why you need an editor. So what did book number 3 teach you?
This 7% Slower, this book, this taught me that I don't always have to write. I can write in little chunks.
Oh,
so
good.
yeah, my plan was, and the book that'll come after this, really, I had like 3 books in mind, you know?
Yeah.
And
You're not done though. You're
well,
not.
Yeah, but it's funny because it'll be 4. So the next book is really the third. The 4th book is really the 3rd book that was in my head.
Right.
Like, what is it like to have an anxiety disorder? How do you recover from it? And what is life after it? Those are the 3 books. This one got inserted after the first 2, but it taught me the lesson of like writing tools, like true, simple, easy to use, where I could like fill somebody's tool bag with these little books that they can just take out and refer to here and there. It taught me that, which is a different kind of writing altogether.
So it exposed you to a totally kind of, as you talked about it, a cottage niche, or what did you call it? A cottage what?
Just a different way to teach. Like, so for me, writing isn't writing is teaching. I'm actually teaching when I write. So when I'm writing, I'm literally teaching the person. I know that I'm the teacher to whoever's reading. So to me, it was just an exercise in teaching a different way in a little bites. So it was interesting because I said, I guess this one would be about 15,000 words. You like, yeah, you need 15,000 for a spine. Like, you had all the cool info. Like, this is why I need you so much. And then I remember like 3 days into it, texting you saying like, yeah, we're going to go way over 15,000. And I found myself saying, no, we're not writing a 50,000 word monster here. No. And it was good because it kept me focused. I'm like, no. If I get a veer off, maybe that's another book, another day.
Yeah. And catering to a different audience. The person who's going to pick up that 15,000 word book is a different person that's going to pick up that 50,000 word tome. That's a different person. That's a person that's like, I'm speedy. I want to get things done. I want some tools right now. I want to feel better right now. And your book is designed to fit their experience in the moment, their current experience, where they can go, okay, this is quick. This is easy. We've got some bite-sized chunks here that I can use right now today to feel better.
And that's interesting because, like The Anxious Truth, 70,000 words, it's a big deal. Like, it's a textbook, whereas this is more of an instruction manual. That's the best way.
But it's crazy that you're not a teacher. It's crazy that like 7-year-old Drew wasn't like, I'm going to grow up and I'm going to teach geography. Like, it's crazy that wasn't ever in you because you're such a natural teacher.
Well, what's interesting about that is I would have never, why did I not write a book? Why did I resist writing a book for a long time? There you go. Bring it right back to the very first question. When did I know that it was time to write a book? When I accepted that I am a teacher. Because for my entire life, I would have told you there is no way I could ever, that is, if you're a teacher, my hat is off to you. I respect you. I could never do that work.
Yeah.
And after you have 15,000 people call you a teacher, you start to think like, I guess I'm a teacher. And I remember literally posting a Facebook status late one night saying, I am a teacher. That's all I wrote. And and I remember that. And it was like, okay, now I guess now I can write a book because that's what I do. I teach on this topic.
Okay, this is crazy. So it was about ownership of a whole different side of yourself. And when you were able to accept that, and you were able to move into this whole new, this is like the National Geographic of Drew right now today.
I think, it was, because I would always tell you, like, I don't have the patience to teach. And I still contend that, like, there are many things that I could never teach. I'm not going to teach anybody calculus in the near future. I don't have the patience for that. But for whatever reason, on this topic, because I lived it, because I don't know what, it just runs through me. It's something I'm passionate. I hate to use that word. I'm not going to use it, but
Yeah.
it's something that I'm so interested about and I immerse myself in, and I have a personal connection to. In this topic, I am a teacher, and
I
that
love it.
allows me to be a writer. So there you go.
Oh, I love it. What a wonderful wrap up. Final question.
Sure.
You want to go for the big wombo mambo, jumbo wumba, whatever that video, that game show was in Friends, like the wacky wazoo or
Oh, I'm
whatever.
a Friends person, but so,
Yeah.
all right. But
Yeah. You know what I'm talking about. Yeah.
okay.
Joey and Ross were playing this game and Joey was trying to be the game show host. Anyways, watch as her joke falls flat. Okay. So final question.
I'm sure there are thousands of people laughing right now.
Yeah.
Don't go
There's
by me.
one like, oh,
There's
that
one,
wacky
I
girl.
don't know what she's talking about. I know she's funny, but I'm not getting this.
The big bazoo. I don't know. What do people not know about you?
What do they not know about me? Oh, that's a good question. Actually, well, we're friends, so we've had a little bit of this conversation before too. People don't know a lot about me because I generally don't share a lot.
Yes.
Yes. So what do they not know about me? They don't know a lot about me.
Give me one thing. What's your favorite pizza topping?
Well, that's silly. I guess I'd be a pepperoni guy. You know, I tell you about my pepperoni pizza. I have no problem with that. Okay. One little thing that could be my answer.
Yeah.
Here's what people don't know about me. And this runs counter to what most people think about me, because I'm a little bit, loud and I got that sort of image. But if you come at me with a peach that has the fuzz on it, it's going to get physical. I ain't letting you get to me. Like, we're going to throw down. Like, that is my thing. Like, I will do not bring peach fuzz into this room right here, because I'm going to do what I got to do to stop you before you get to me. I will put you down. I love you, but I will put you down.
What happened? Did you try and have one time, or?
I don't know. It's just like nectarine's greatest invention ever, because it's peaches without the fuzz for the most part. Like, whoever engineered that, I don't know if that's a God thing or if that's like a lab thing. Either way, I'm good with it, because the peach, who decided that there should be fun in evolution? Like, fruit develops things naturally over millions of years to protect it against predators. I'm telling you, the fuzz is one of those. We're just too stupid as a species to know that that's a defense mechanism. So we bite into it like crazy people. So all y'all that are eating peaches with the fuzz on it, you're all crazy. I'm convinced, because it is nasty. It's just nasty. As you can tell.
Like, same thing with kiwis for you then. If you just took a big bite of kiwi.
Are you supposed to eat the kiwi skin?
No, you're not. No,
you're not supposed to.
No,
But I'll
being
peel a
ridiculous.
kiwi. I'll peel a kiwi with the best of them. But I ain't peeling a peach.
You're not
Now,
going to eat a peach even after you take the skin off.
if you peel it for me because you're a dear friend and you might do that for me, I would totally eat that peach. I would eat the hell out of the peach, because peaches are delicious. But you put it in a pie, give me a can of peaches, I'll be your buddy. Like, it's all good. But if it has skin on it, I ain't going there.
Man,
no.
I gotta return my Peach of the Month club to you.
Oh,
Shoot.
you know what you're gonna have for my birthday? Is that it? The peach of the month?
Yes, the Peach of the Month club. Oh my gosh.
How's
All
that
right,
for
well,
totally ridiculous?
it
what you
was.
got? How do we share without sharing? You talk about the peaches.
We talk about the peaches. That's right. Now people get it. You're gonna get that all the time now.
Oh, man.
You're gonna get peach emojis all the time. You're gonna get peach gifs or gifs or however the hell it's supposed to be said. Somebody complicated that. They were like, it's like peanut butter, it's Jif. I was like, just go away. I pretended they had a peach. I was like, get out of here.
The guy that invented it said GIF, and I'm like, no, I'm still saying GIF. Too bad.
I am saying GIF too, because that is it's insane. It's insane. Drew, I'm so happy you were on today. You shared so much with us. I think that was very helpful to a lot of readers and a lot of writers and people who don't know how to get started, even people who don't even understand how to think of themselves to get started. And sometimes it's as simple as saying, I'm a teacher, I'm a writer, I'm a leader, I'm a coach. When you say I am, and then you attach your identity to it, it kind of gives you permission to move forward and do those things.
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate.
Pretty awesome. Thanks so much for being on.
Very welcome. Anytime.
Killer boots, like always. We want to thank Drew for being here and being willing to spill the tea on his sacred book writing secrets. Remember, if you and anxiety don't see eye to eye, Tune into his podcast, The Anxious Truth, wherever podcasts are available, and follow him on the socials. You will not be disappointed. You will be highly entertained. You will see a lot about peaches, probably. His books, again, are The Anxious Truth, An Anxiety Story, which is his memoir, and I know the soon-to-be bestseller 7% Slower. So keep your eyeballs peeled for that as well. And don't forget to blast over to jhillcreative.com, jhill1lcreative.com, and send an email to discuss your book. If you're ready to roll, or if you simply need guidance getting started, we are here for you. Now, isn't it time to go book yourself? You know where to go. I want to thank you so much for listening today. Until next time, authors, write on.